Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Strand. My name is Sabir, and I direct the events here. For a little bit of history, Strand was founded in 1927 by the Bass family over on 4th Avenue's Book Row. Stretching from Union Square to Astor Place, Book Row gradually dwindled until after 92 years, Strand is the sole survivor, still run by the Bass family and still housing new and used books. Tonight, I'm excited to welcome Céline Santini to the Strand. A writer, coach, and blogger, Celine is the author of several books for children and adults. She writes about self-help themes on her site, Kintsugi Spirit, and recently gave a TedX talk on the importance of kintsugi and self-care. Celine is also the winner of the Professional Resilience Award for her French version of Kintsugi. Please join me in welcoming Celine to the Strand to discuss her book, Kintsugi, Finding Strength in Imperfection.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me well? Hello? No, I think it... Yeah? The microphone... No, it doesn't work? No, yeah? Oh, okay, sorry. I'm sorry. I'm actually very thrilled to be there. You have to know I come all the way from France. I live in France, so it's very exciting for me to be there. And before I start to talk to you about Kintsugi, I like to share a very personal anecdote, because which starts bad and finishes well. Just after my mom passed away in 2012, you can imagine I was very broken, like a broken ball on the floor. And I didn't know what to do with my life. I just knew I just couldn't go on being doing my old job of wedding planning, because wedding planning is all about happiness. And I was just very sad inside, very broken inside. So I was trying to find my new calling, my true calling. And I bought this book, which was doing, making me doing exercise to find my true calling. And you know how sometimes a book can really change your life. And I mean, you are in the rare books room, so you know that. And there was this exercise, which was, okay, if you were like a cat, I also encourage you to ask yourself the same question. If you were like a cat and you had 7 lives, which lives would you like to do? I listed my lives. So one would be like an electro music DJ. Well, actually, it's not accomplished yet. The second one was like I would be a mother living in my hometown, getting back to my hometown. And I'm a proud mother of 2 wonderful daughters in my hometown. And the third one, and I really don't know why I listed that, because at that time, you have to remember, I was not writing, I was a wedding planner. And I wrote, I will be a writer in New York. In New York, why New York? I don't know, but it's really what I wrote. So can you imagine how incredible for me it is to be there, here, and now in New York? So just for the introduction. So together, we'll go through the path of Kintsugi. Some of you know it, some of you don't, but I hope that all of you get an idea of Kintsugi after this talk. We will talk about the technique of Kintsugi, but the technique of Kintsugi is just like a pretext to talk about symbology and about your own path in life and your own cracks and your own healing. So first, I will present you the Kintsugi Spirit in general. Then we'll go through the 6 steps, which are listed in the book. And then we will do a question and answer section. And then after, we will do the signing. So what do you think? Yeah? OK, let's do that. So we'll start our path in the 15th century. So I want you to imagine that you are in a time machine, and you go back to the 15th century in the court of the shogun of Japan. So a shogun is executive chief, army chief. So very important character. And as you can imagine, he enjoys a lot the tea ceremony, because it's in Japan in the 15th. And every day he uses this beautiful bowl, which he loves so much. It's a Chinese bowl, actually. And one day, actually this ball falls on the floor and breaks. So this shogun is very, very disappointed, very, very sad. And so he decides to send this ball back to China to make it repair. And you can imagine at that time how long it took for a ball to travel from Japan to China. So he waits like weeks and months to get his ball back. And here is what happened, what he got back. This is what is called the staples repair. It's actually a technique which consists, as you can see on this picture, to attach the cracks with staples, like metal staples. But there are two problems with this technique. What are they? What do you think? Do you see a problem with that or not? Well, I can help you. From what I think is that the first problem is it's not watertight anymore. And it's a problem for a tea ball. Can you imagine? And the second problem is that, well, it's not very refined. It's not very subtle. It's very heavy repair. I mean, you notice it straight away. And so this shogun didn't like it at all. So what he said is he asked his Japanese artist to find a better solution. And it's when this artist had the idea to apply gold on the scars. So this is a very interesting kintsugi. You see on the cracks, they applied gold. So in Japanese, actually, kin means gold and tsugi means joint. So it's literally the art of golden joint. So the idea is that instead of throwing away the broken object, you decide to repair it, but instead of hiding the repair, you are actually decide to highlight it with real gold. And gold is not any metal. That's actually the most symbolic in the world. That's the most precious in the world. And it shines, and it's beautiful, and it's precious. Though in a way, this ball is weirdly, paradoxically, more precious because it's gold, and stronger because actually the lacquer that they use, because I will explain you the process just after, the lacquer which they use actually reinforce the ball. It strengthens the ball. So they say that some kintsugi master actually drop a kintsugi ball on the floor to check if it's well repaired. And what happened if it's not well repaired? It doesn't matter because it creates new lines. So it's even more beautiful after. So that's an unlimited process. So it's good also because once you get acquainted with kintsugi, you don't worry anymore about smashing your things. You know, actually, my oldest daughter, she says, the other time she broke a plate I really enjoy, like a family plate, and I said, okay, kintsugi, because that's what you say when you get acquainted with kintsugi, and then she added, well, you can thank me, ma'am, because thanks to me, you will do another kintsugi. And I said, oh, come on, don't push it too much. But you get the idea. So the idea that when I first got acquainted with kintsugi, at that time I was going through my second divorce, and it was very painful, and I was destroyed again. And by chance, I bought a magazine because the title on the cover was How to Have a Successful Divorce. So I bought this article, and it was not a long time ago. It was actually 2.5 years ago. So it's very recent. I had, as a lot of you tonight, I had never heard of kintsugi before in my whole life because it's not very common. And this article mentioned kintsugi, and it really intrigued me. And so what I did is I typed kintsugi on the internet, and I found this very ball. And in that very moment, in 1 second, it was like an epiphany for me. It was like, in one instant, I knew I was a living kintsugi. And I got it, in 1 second, the energy of kintsugi like infused in my whole myself. It's like I'm repaired instantly. And then after, when I studied kintsugi, because I was so interested and so amazed by this art, and I discovered that there were 6 steps to do an actual kintsugi. And this is why it gets interesting, because there are several layers to get to with kintsugi. First layer is to see the actual result. And you can decide to do your own kintsugi, but you can also decide just to watch a kintsugi. And even by watching a picture, the people who get kintsugi, it repairs them instantly. What is incredible with this art is that when you get to know it with the 6 steps that are listed in the book and that I will list to you now, each step in itself is also significant for your own self-growth. So kintsugi is not just an art, it's also a symbol. And this is what this book is all about. It's about having a look at the technique and then applying it to your own life. So let's do it together. So this is the first step, break. This step is very important because at that time, you have to acknowledge the fact that you've been broken. Because if you don't, you could go on and, repair yourself quickly with maybe epoxy glue, and it looks invisible, the repair. But when you get closer to the ball, the repair is not that good. And the object which pretends to be repaired is actually still broken. So the fact that you acknowledge that you're broken is the first step, because then you can go on in your life. Then you can really repair yourself and heal for good instead of pretending to be okay. And also at this step, it's interesting to take the time to take a step back on your situation. Because if you're too close to the broken object, you might miss some pieces which have been away. When you take a step back on your situation, it's symbolically when you try to figure out your whole life and try to figure out your patterns. And this is a very important step. So the step 2 is a step when you assemble the pieces. When I told you, the pieces, when the ball breaks, sometimes the pieces can, you can lose one shard. It can go under a cupboard or somewhere. You can lose it, or it's too broken to be repaired. But what is great with kintsugi is that you can actually take a shard from another object, as on this picture, which is, in this case, it's total shell. And you can integrate it to your own repair. And this is very symbolic too, because in life, sometimes you miss a shard, you miss a piece. And in that case, instead of pretending that everything is okay and go on like that, what you do is that you take advice from somewhere else. You take maybe coaching, or you take help. And the help from outside makes this beautiful blending, and you get even stronger after being broken, and actually more interesting. Imagine this ball before being broken. It would be nice, but now it's so much more interesting. And the way they actually repair it is with the sabi. So maybe you've heard of this word sabi before, in wabi-sabi. Have you ever heard this expression, wabi-sabi? It's a Japanese concept of accepting the imperfection. And we could say that kintsugi is one current of wabi-sabi. And sabi is actually the cement which holds the shards. It's a mixture of flour and lacquer, and you mix it, and then you've got like a paste. And this is how we attach the shards. So it's step 1, break, and step 2, assemble. And then there's the third step, wait. I must confess, I'm not the waiting kind of person. I'm more the rushing kind of person. The kind who literally, when it doesn't go fast enough, you have a plant and you just, try it to make go faster. Like you pull it. I'm this kind of person, but it doesn't work. It's not very efficient. So I'm learning to let go. And since I got acquainted with kintsugi, I'm actually better at that. Just to give you an example, when I wanted to be a wedding planner, like 15 years ago, I wanted to quit my job, and I quit in actually one day. I took my decision, and my husband at the time told me, "Okay, you just wait a whole month before you quit, because we would have no money." And I said, "Okay, I wait," and I waited 3 days. So, and when my mother passed away, and I decided to close my company because I couldn't go on, I actually did it. I closed the 10 years company in 4 hours. Just 4 hours. So just to give you another example, I'm not the waiting guy. But in Kintsugi, what is interesting is that you have no other choice. Because what happens is, if you don't wait that the lacquer dries and strengthens the object, you will have to do it all over again, which doesn't make sense. So I wanted, the final result when I started Kintsugi, I wanted to be repaired in one instant, in one session. But Kintsugi is here to remind you that sometimes there are no other choice than let time do its work. And this is learning to let go. And I'm working every day on that, and I'm getting better. And it's a long process, but I think we grow during all of our lives. So it's break, assemble, and wait. So step 4 is the repair part. So what you do is you remember this sabi. It's when it's dried, very strong, you sand it. And by doing so, you get smooth cracks, smooth lines. And on each of these smooth cracks, you apply a fine line of bright red lacquer, which are on this picture. And the symbology here is very important because does these red lines remind you of something? No, sorry, what did you say? Blood? Yeah. Well, sorry?
Blood vessels.
Blood vessels, so again, yeah. Well, actually, that's one answer per person. But yes, for me, personally, when I saw that the first time, it made me think about veins and blood. And I think it's very interesting because symbolically speaking, it's the step when there's life coming back in the object, as if his heart is beating again. So we are close to the repair. We are close to the final step. So it's break, assemble, wait, repair. And then come the gold. Though this is the step we've been waiting for so long because each of this process is actually like weeks and weeks. They even say that sometimes it takes a whole year to accomplish a perfect kintsugi. So you have to be patient. You can't get this result in one session, in one day. So how it works? First time I met kintsugi, I actually thought, and maybe that's your case, that the gold was like a melted gold, like in jewelry, and that this melting gold was melted on the scars. But actually it's not. It would be too much of a mess. So what they do is that on the red lacquer, when it's still wet, they sprinkle pure gold powder. And this gold merged within the cracks. And this is what recreates the idea of gold. And have you ever put some nail varnish on your nails? Nail polish? So this is exactly the same kind of material in this lacquer, the red lacquer I showed you just before. So can you imagine, if you put powder on your nails, when you've varnished them, the effect which it does. That's exactly what it does. So this is obviously one of the most important steps of kintsugi, because that's the moment when you admit that you embrace the fact that you really deserve to put gold on your scars, because you deserve to invest on you, to invest time and money and patience on you. And it's not a quick repair. But after, it's so beautiful, and it's so worth it. It's worth the wait, and it's worth the time. And then, the final step, because you could stop here, but there's 6 steps. So it's break, assemble, wait, repair, reveal. And the 6 steps is the step when you sublimate the object. Why? Because actually, gold is a metal. And as any metal, if you polish it, it shines. So you can even make your kintsugi even more beautiful and even more precious by polishing it, by burnishing it, and then it shines even more. So obviously this step is even more symbolic because that's the time when you really embrace your imperfection. You embrace the fact that you are perfectly imperfect, that you have been through a very difficult path in your life, but you have survived 100% of your worst experiences up until now. And by putting this gold, you say, I'm alive, and I'm still there, and I'm stronger, and more beautiful, and more precious for having been broken. So it's break, assemble, wait, repair, reveal, and sublimate. So what I suggest is now I will show you some examples of kintsugi so that you get a feeling of kintsugi. We don't like, all of us, we don't like the same kintsugi. Some speak more to us because of maybe the pattern of the lines, or maybe the shape of the bowl, or your personal history. So I will show you without speaking so that you really can get acquainted with the deep spirit of kintsugi. One by one, I will show you some examples. Just take the time to reflect with yourself and ask yourself which one you like better. And then after we talk, okay? This last one is very symbolic, obviously, for anyone who has had a broken heart. So I started with a personal anecdote, and I'd like to finish with a personal anecdote, which actually happened just 2 days ago. But it starts 5 years ago. As I told you, I was a bit stuck after my mother, when my mother passed away, and I didn't know how to proceed with my life. And I knew it had to do something with self-growth, but I just didn't know what at that time. Why? Because I hadn't met Kintsugi yet. And I decided to take a session with an hypnotherapist to unstuck me. And this guy is very good because after just one session, actually the next week, I started my blog, my writing blog. So it did a good job. And this hypnotherapist sometimes takes news. You know, he says, "Oh, how are you?" And he follows me on Facebook, and he said, "Oh, I see that you are in New York now. It's good. It's going well." And he saw all my path, and he says, and I reply, "Yeah, it's quite magical at that moment of my life. Everything is magic." And what he answers, he says, "Actually, you are the magician." And I thought it was so intense what he said. It looks simple, and I said to myself, yes, actually he's right. And you see, I have a proof. I have a golden magic wand, you know? And I'd like to finish with the fact that you are all actually magicians in your life. And you are the one who can put the gold on your own scars. And you are the one who decide to repair yourself. And you are the one who decide to change your lead into gold. So, thank you. So, maybe we can proceed with question and answer. I'd suggest any kind of answer. It can be related to the technique because we have been quite quickly through the techniques, but it can also be a question regarding my path, or questions regarding the symbology of Kintsugi, or anything you want to share. There's actually another microphone. Perfect. Thank you.
You had mentioned earlier about wabi-sabi.
Yeah.
And how do you compare wabi-sabi with kintsugi? What are the nuances that separate them?
Very interesting question. I will just repeat it just in case some person didn't hear. So your question is, how do you compare wabi-sabi with kintsugi? Because they are both Japanese concepts, and actually they have a lot in common. Wabi-sabi is about embracing imperfection. So this is in common with kintsugi, obviously. But wabi-sabi is more embracing the imperfection in a kind of rough way. Like in wabi-sabi, you accept the passing of time. Like, for instance, something has been, I don't know the word in English, sorry. You know, when something is under the rain and then the time goes by and it's patinated. Can you say patinated? No. Yeah? Okay. She's an antique person, so she knows the word patinated. But what I mean is, you know, the time goes on the object and work the object over the years, over the centuries. And so, and Wabi-Sabi is about things very simple. And Kintsugi is kind of an undercurrent of Wabi-Sabi, but in a more sophisticated way, because we apply gold on the scars, which is kind of paradox, because we say at the same time, embrace your imperfection, but we also say, embrace it in a perfect way. So it's a bit more paradoxal than Wabi-Sabi, but still it's the same current. Thank you. Any other question? Oh, come on, I traveled all the way from France. You can ask me some questions. Thank you. The microphone arrives.
I bought your book because these concepts, these steps that you described, I feel the echo of them in my life because I'm older now and I've lived the greater part of my life. And I feel some of those steps having taken place. Woundedness that has occurred, quote unquote, unfair treatment, and the ways in which I dealt with those things as a young woman is very different than the ways I dealt with it as I gained more finesse and a greater perception of solutions.
Yeah.
And I can identify with this, and I started reading your book as a journey within.
Yeah, exactly.
And I find it very helpful for that.
Thank you.
Did you write it meaning for that to be?
Well, I tried. I'm very selfish with this book because actually I wrote it for myself. To repair myself. You'll get a little bit of my life when you read it, but I've been through, well, not more, not less than everybody else in this room. We've all been through sufferings in a different way. Sometimes it's more emotional suffering, sometimes it's more physical injuries. But anyway, we know all of that. All of us in the room, we know what suffering means. And the idea is not to compare suffering. The idea is not to say, oh, I suffered more than you, I deserve more gold. No, no, no. The idea is, if you have suffered, anyway, I mean, if you are a human being, let me rephrase that. If you are a human being, you deserve all the gold in the world, on your wants, anyway. But as I try to describe you this epiphany, when I met Kintsugi, it was like life. You know, there's a before and a after. So I met Kintsugi, I got this epiphany, and I knew I wanted to write about it. And what is interesting is, you know, sometimes more and more I believe in energy, because I see things happening in my life. You know, these magic things I just mentioned before, because I have got my magic wand maybe, but I think my magic wand is inside me. And I got this incredible opportunity because, you know, when the doors just open magically, and I had published books, but not on Kintsugi before. My other books were on education and Montessori education. So you could say it's quite different, but there's still in common the idea of self-growth anyway. And this publisher, by chance, had a Kintsugi book from someone else on her desk, and she was hesitating to translate it. And actually, the father of my daughter goes in her office, and he says, "Oh, do you know that Celine is actually interested in Kintsugi and is writing about Kintsugi," which actually I was not yet. I had inside, but I didn't write it. And she said, "Oh, well, I'm very interested. It would be great to have our own author to write this book." And I don't lie to you. 4 days after, the synopsis was written and accepted. I told you I'm not the waiting kind person, but sometimes when it's aligned, the doors open. The question?
Hi, Celine. I just want to tell everyone that Celine, if you want to hear more of her story, she will be speaking at the Global Women's Summit on Friday, this Friday, August 2nd, at Civic Hall in the Flatiron District.
That's right.
And you can watch her live streamed also on Civic Hall's YouTube.
That's right. I will do this conference. I did one last week with this Leading with Heart Summit in Las Vegas, and this week I do it in New York. So it's incredible adventure. And the Kintsugi actually brought me in New York. Come on, it's how magical is that? So maybe Kintsugi can put magic in your life too. You know, I hope so. I wish you that.
Do you see in the near future maybe like Kintsugi becoming really mainstream and there being, Kintsugi kits in stores, or do you think that a lot of the beauty and uniqueness is, we know each other, so I know that you sometimes have to work really hard to get your materials, and that's half of the fun, and also works as a parallel with emotional healing?
Thank you. Very interesting question too, because I ask myself the same question, because that's weird. It's only two years and a half ago, I had never heard of Kintsugi in my whole life. And most people in this room, I asked them before we started, are you aware about Kintsugi? How did you meet it? Some people knew about it, but most of you didn't even know the word Kintsugi a few weeks ago. So that's true. It's really not mainstream. In comparison with maybe Wabi-Sabi or other Ikigai concepts, which are from Japan too, or maybe, Feng Shui, which has been arrived in the years 80s here in Western countries. So I would say yes and no. Why? Because I see that things are moving. It's very interesting. My book was released in France in April 2018. And in April 2018, actually an American book from another author was published. And in April 2018, another book was published in London. Come on, just the exact same dates. That's weird. It's like something is around in the universe with Kintsugi, So I think with all of us, we spread the word anyway. So I see that, for instance, on Instagram, there are much more hashtag Kintsugi than before. And we are all working on that. I see here Miriam from Mika Fashion Designs, who actually did this wonderful dress. Everybody thinks my dress is tailor-made for the book because it's matched the cover, but actually, no, that's the contrary. I met Miriam through this dress because it was matching so well my book, and Miriam introduced me to Mimi, who invited me to New York. So this is thanks to this dress that I'm here today in front of you. So what I mean is Miriam, in another way, not books but fashion, also spread the word on Kintsugi. And I think that's true for all the tailor shops who more and more tailor shops suggest Kintsugi lessons, etc., etc. So yes, I think the word is spreading about Kintsugi, which is a good thing. But no, in the way that, weirdly, I really think that not everybody gets Kintsugi. It's not mainstream concept. I don't know exactly why, but it's not as mainstream as other Japanese concept. I think I tried to answer this question. I think I got an answer. The Kintsugi only speaks for a resilient person. The true resilient person who are already resilient gets a very deep feeling of Kintsugi, and for this person, Kintsugi is a core shaker. But I would say, when I speak about Kintsugi, only 10% maybe of the people I speak to really get Kintsugi. So I'm not sure it will be a mainstream concept, but more and more resilient person will get acquainted with Kintsugi as I was. And then I say we because I think that all the people in this room are there because they get Kintsugi. So all the people in this room might be Brazilian person. And then when we get repaired with the Kintsugi process, which is not a cheap way, it's not a very quick way, it's a long way, it's a slow process, but it's worth it. And then we can then talk to the other person who need help, and then help them to pick up their own pieces and shine. Another question? Oh, sorry. Sorry. First the lady, and then after you, because she has the microphone. Thank you.
Yes, so it's a little bit of a reflection too, along the lines of the woman up front with the antique business. So I'm fascinated by this because I'm a yoga teacher, and on one hand there's a teaching that there's like an if this then that sort of idea, but then on a deeper level, if you go further down the rabbit hole, there's also an idea that the world is fragmented, and that there's always an extra broken piece. And in addition to that, that it's random. And I think it's very interesting that you're making a choice for the world, for your experience. You know you're going to do this art, but you're going to break it, and you don't know how it's going to happen.
Exactly.
And you just got to go with it. And I think that type of practice is amazing. And I don't know if there's anything you'd want to speak to in that respect.
Thank you. That's true. I didn't insist in this presentation about the uniqueness of each kintsugi, of the uniqueness of the pattern, because that's true. Each ball which breaks in a different way, as our own paths are different. It's different from anybody else. If you got even the same parents and the same kind of education, you would have a different path anyway. And to give you a very specific example, I did a TED Talk, and in this TED Talk, I actually drop a ball which breaks on the scene. I did a rehearsal, and I did the actual TED Talk. On the rehearsal, the ball broke in 17 pieces. On the TED Talk, it broke in 3. And last week, I did another smashing on stage presentation in Las Vegas with Leading with Heart event. And actually, the ball didn't break. It's ceramic. It should have been broken, but I had a little trick in case it didn't break, so I could rebound. And then I smashed it again, and then I put more strength, because this time, it would have been ridiculous that it didn't break the second time. So I smashed it more, and it exploded in, I don't know, maybe 1,000 pieces, like very tiny shards. So it's different effects. So what I mean is, and actually I bought the exact same ball in the 3 cases. So on Friday I do it again. I smash another ball, and maybe a different pattern, but it's what the life is all about. So you had another question?
No, it's interesting that I'm here tonight because I'm part of this business that has a lot of self-growth to it. And as you go through the self-growth, it's like peeling away little layers, you know. Yeah. You have to get through certain things in order to have that bowl that has the gold that can be shiny. And it's interesting that I'm here because everything that you've said, there's certain things I was writing about in my own. I have a little thing on called Knowledge is Power. And so there's so many different things that you're mentioning, and I get this very well, of how we're all just broken, and eventually you have to start to understand all those things and let the pieces come together and let things shine and understand all of that. And so many times we just put it aside. We just, oh, I'm not this or I'm not that. And hopefully the way that you've put this together in there will allow anyone to like come to fruition and become that, you know, broken bowl that's now, you know, perfectly imperfect. It's an interesting thing. Yeah. It really is.
And I think that to rebound on what you just said, I think that Kintsugi as a very optimistic message. And I wouldn't say that, you understood I've been married twice, and so I've been divorced twice. And I wouldn't say that the second time was like a happy moment, you know. It's not because I have more experience that it's pleasant. But in a way, weirdly, the second time was not as scary as the first one, because I knew that I had been through it the first time, and I had survived, and I had put gold on my scars. And so it gave me strength and knowledge and of self-confidence. And I think that's the whole message of Kintsugi, that we are broken, but since we can put gold on our scars, now we can be broken again. It doesn't matter, in a way, because it will be even more beautiful after.
Celine, just a question. You have a blog in France, Jour après jour.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that? And does it follow the principles of Kintsugi?
Actually, I wrote this blog like 4 years ago. That's a blog which really unblocked my writing. When I was 6, I always said, you know, when they ask you what do you want to do, and I always said I want to be a writer. And from the age of 6 to the age of 40, I didn't do any writing. And though this blog was more like, you know, liberating something. And I wrote it like 10 hours a day, but I had nobody reading it. But I still kept on doing that for 1 year, like 10 hours a day. And actually, it was my calling card when they offered me to write this Montessori education book. And for the moment, I don't put in more energy on that, because I put all my energy on my published books. So the blog is still on. But actually, it's funny because I stopped exactly by chance the 100 articles. And when I wrote the 100th article, I got this opportunity to write my first book. And then after everything was, as I said, the doors opened. And I'm now a full-time writer. And I have so many other projects, and actually I don't have enough time to do all the projects I have inside. That is so exciting. Thank you. Sorry, just thank you.
Do you have an example of a time Kintsugi was applied in real life and like what each step translated to symbolically?
I'm sorry, I didn't get your question.
Do you have an example of a time Kintsugi was applied in a real life example and what each step was in the real life example?
So, now that I'm aware of Kintsugi, I see Kintsugi everywhere. I mean, you can see it in nature, you can see it in the past of a celebrity. For instance, I don't know if I heard the other day Lady Gaga, her award speech, and it was so Kintsugi. And when you see, for instance, a tree which is cut, and there's a little tiny branch going, you know, in the middle of the cut trunk, and there's a little branch trying to get its way. This is Kintsugi. Kintsugi is everywhere. I see Miriam nodding because she's the same. She sees Kintsugi everywhere now, and I'm sure that now you get acquainted with Kintsugi, you will see Kintsugi everywhere in the past of anonymous person, and in the past of celebrity, and in decoration, and in art, and in everywhere. So I don't have one specific example to tell you, but I actually wrote this blog, which is esprit-kintsugi.com, which is translated in English too, where I put everything I could find related to Kintsugi in the world. So I put some examples there about celebrities who like Kintsugi, about psychology of Kintsugi, etc., etc. So you can have a look there. There are more examples.
Thank you, and I think we're out of time for questions, but
thank you so much. So maybe we can proceed to the signing now.
Yes. So we'll be doing a book signing over here. If you'd like to start lining up right along here, that'd be great, and you can head right to the table.
And also, I just a little detail. Tomorrow, I do an event with Miriam, the designer I mentioned. So if you want to join us, just come to her to ask her more information. It's a girl-only event.